One of the most famous chess games of all time is between the American legend Paul Morphy against the Duke of Brunswick and Count Iceward. This spectacular game is dubbed the Opera game because it was played at the Paris Opera. People from all around the world to this day admire this magnificent game due to Morphy's display of tactical brilliance. After Morphy's rapid development and the created immense pressure aimed at his opponent's uncastled king who is at the same time boxed in by his own pieces, Morphy wins the game with an all-out attack that involves a brilliant sequence of sacrifices that forces all of the pieces who are protecting the amateur player's king to scatter and weaken their defense. Then with an astonishing queen sacrifice in the end, Morphy mates the amateur players with his rook and bishop.
Our Wakanda Forever's gambit was successful.
No!
Both players started with the king's pawn opening, which we know by now is considered to be the best because it opens up the way for the queen and bishop. After white developed his horsey on f3 and attacked the hanging pawn, black responded with the Philidor defense. This is a common defensive strategy used by black to counter the attack on the pawn and also to control the center of the board. Then white contested the center by moving his pawn to d4. This move was important because it increased the number of pieces attacking the pawn and helped to control more space on the board. Black played bishop to g4, which was considered a standard response at that time. However, in modern chess this move is viewed as an inaccuracy because it can lead to some problematic situations for black. For example, if white captures black's central pawn and black takes back, white can simply trade queens. After black takes back with his king, white's horsey can capture the hanging pawn. If this happens in the game, white will not only be up a pawn but he'll also be threatening the bishop on g4 and the f7 pawn. In that position the king could easily be forked if black is careless. So after white captured on e5, black took out the horsey with his bishop. White responded by taking back with his queen, developing her simultaneously and gaining tempo. After black captured on e5 with his pawn, white developed his bishop on c4. This is a brilliant move because now the queen and bishop created a checkmate threat on the vulnerable f7 square. Black defended the king by moving his horsey. In response, white moved his queen to b3, creating a battery with the bishop and threatened both pawns on f7 and b7 simultaneously, creating immense pressure on black. In response, black places his queen on e7 to defend the pawn. Although white developed his horsey, many experts would recommend to capture on b7 with the queen since it is the strongest move. However, white wanted to win with class and precision, so he chose rapid development over material gain. Black tried to kick white's bishop with his pawn, hoping that white would retreat from the strong vantage point on c4. However, white had a brilliant move up his sleeve. He sacrificed his horsey in order to get his bishop involved in the attack against black's king. This was a brilliant move because it forces black to use his knight to block the check, pinning it in the process. The king could have also moved to d8 as well, but if black did that, then white could execute a quick queenside castle and involve an additional piece in his assault, and the king would be less defended in the position. Then no matter what move black plays, it will result in a checkmate after a few moves or huge material loss for black depending on what moves he plays next due to white's enormous pressure. As expected, after black's horsey moved, white castled queenside, which put immense pressure on black's knight. With a twin threat from the rook and bishop, black was forced to defend the horsey with his rook. As a result, white has even more control over the game. Having black's king completely blocked in by his own pieces, white brilliantly started sacrificing his pieces one after another, and even though black tried to get the queens off the board by offering a queen trade, white didn't let up with his assault, and with a dazzling queen sacrifice in the end he forces black to capture the queen with his horsey. Then the d-file was completely open for white's rook to deliver the checkmate. The black king cannot capture the rook because white's dark square bishop brilliantly protects the black diagonal where the rook is placed on. Morphy brilliantly demonstrated the value of development and how to effectively use sacrifices to remove the defenses of the opposing opponent's king and won the game. Our second game is between Levon Aronian and Viswanathan Anand. This game is considered by many as Anand's absolute masterpiece and is ranked as the third best chess game of all time. In addition, people refer to this game as Anand's immortal game due to his display of tactical prowess. The most spectacular moment in the game is when Anand offers 3 of his minor pieces as a sacrifice in order to remove one of the important pawns that shield Aronian's king, and although his opponent saw through his plan, he knew it was impossible to escape the inevitable checkmate as all of Anand's minor pieces and his queen were included in the attack, so he resigned before Anand could deliver the checkmate.
Why didn't you accept our Wakanda Forever's gambit?
Because your gambits are sus.
That's why you lost.
I would have lost anyway.
White opened the game with the queen's gambit. The purpose of this opening is to sacrifice the c4 pawn in order to expand on the center to gain a perfect pawn structure and later on retake black's pawn with the bishop in order to develop it and gain good central control simultaneously. Black however declined the queen's gambit. Black brings out the semi-Slav defense. This is a common opening often used by black when faced with the queen's gambit. Black waited until white moved his bishop before he captured his c4 pawn. This was a good decision because now white is forced to recapture with the bishop, and as we know, moving a piece twice in the early stages of the game is frowned upon because you lose your build-up tempo. In addition, black brilliantly expanded on his queen side and forced the bishop back, which harmed white's tempo even further. Until this horse's move, both sides were developing their pieces normally. However, this knight's move can be considered as an innovative one because it serves multiple purposes. First and foremost, we see that 3 of white's pieces are targeting the weak h7 pawn. However, the knight has the most flexibility because white can decide to place the horsey on e4, and after both sides trade their horses, white can bring his second knight on e4 to attack black's bishop and keep the c5 square contained. Black ignored his hanging pawn and placed his pawn on c5. When you use the semi-Slav, opening pawn to c5 is a requirement because you open the way for the light square bishop, and if white takes the pawn then black's knight can recapture and be in a way more active position. This is the reason why black didn't protect his hanging pawn. He needed to play this move so his pieces could become active. Also, he brilliantly placed his knight on g4, which immediately created massive threats for white. With his bishop pair staring straight at the white king and the way for his queen opened, he can move her on h4 to create a checkmate threat. White is aware of black's threats, and by putting his pawn on f4 he blocks the way of black's bishop. However, this makes his central pawn structure extremely fragile and black immediately uses it to his advantage. On the surface, bishop on c5 may seem bad, however that's not the case. This is a spectacular move that puts white in a dangerous position. If white were to capture the bishop with his pawn, then black would be able to take back with his horsey, freeing the way for his queen simultaneously and creating another set of dazzling threats. For instance, the queen could then move to d4, and in that position numerous checkmate threats are created instantly. Not only will the white king be in check, but after he steps on h1 black will put his horsey on f2. Then regardless of what move white played, it will just set up one of the brilliant checkmates that are available in this position. One of those checkmates, for example, can happen when white captures the horsey with his rook. Then the queen will take back and black can checkmate white in his next move 3 different ways: bishop to g2, queen to g2, or e1. It would be impossible for white to overcome 3 checkmates in this position. He could only delay them for a couple of moves. Black continues with his advances and offers 3 pieces in total as sacrifices. If white takes the horsey or bishop with either of his pawns, then it's going to be checkmate in a few moves. We already showcased what could have happened if white took the bishop. However, if white takes the knight with his pawn, then black can close off the game with style by moving his queen to d4, and after king to h1 we have queen to g1. After the rook takes back we have a spectacular smothered mate with horsey on f2. This is how the end scene would look like. The brilliant checkmate threats black enforces on white are too many for him to deal with, and his defeat was only a matter of time. Even though white eliminated one of black's horses near the end with his bishop and even took the rook with his knight, there are too many pieces involved in the attack and white had no way to stop it. When black finally brought his queen to the action and placed his bishop on e3, white resigned. If white were to take the bishop with his own bishop, it would have been checkmate in 2 moves. Queen to h3 and then queen to h2. On h3 the queen can't be taken by white because black's bishop is pinning the pawn, and after queen to h3 the squares the king could have moved to are covered by black's pieces. This, ladies and gentlemen, was Anand's spectacular immortal game.